Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. She had been exploring space for 15 years now and still felt amazed every time she saw something new. Today would be different from all the other days, though she did not know it yet. The Defiance was not a warship, but an exploration vessel. It carried scientific equipment and a crew of 42 people who wanted to learn about the universe. They had been traveling through the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks now, looking for interesting planets or moons to study. Amy Clark walked up to Lisa and handed her a cup of coffee. Amy was the first officer and had served with Lisa for 8 years. She was smart and brave, and Lisa trusted her completely. "Captain, we are getting some strange readings from that asteroid field ahead," Amy said while pointing at her tablet. "Kate thinks there might be something artificial in there." Kate Phillips was the chief engineer and probably the smartest person on the ship when it came to understanding technology. If Kate thought something was worth looking at, then Lisa always listened. "Show me," Lisa said, and followed Amy to the science station. Kate was staring at her screen with a confused look on her face. Her dark hair was tied back and she wore the blue uniform that all engineering officers used. When she saw Lisa coming, she pointed at the display. "Captain, look at this energy reading. It does not match anything we have seen before. The pattern is too regular to be natural, but too complex to be simple technology." Lisa studied the screen for a moment. The readings showed a large object hidden inside the asteroid field. It was giving off energy in pulses that seemed to follow some kind of pattern. "Could it be a ship?" Lisa asked. "No, Captain," Kate replied. "It is too big and the energy signature is completely different from anything humans have built. I think it might be very old." Dr. Rebecca Stone came over from her medical station. Rebecca was the ship's doctor, but she also studied alien life forms when they found them. She was tall and had red hair and green eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Did someone say alien technology?" Rebecca asked with excitement in her voice. "We have to investigate this." Lisa thought for a moment. They were far from Earth and any other human ships. If something went wrong, they would be on their own. But this could be the discovery of a lifetime. Maria set course for the asteroid. "Field, but keep us at a safe distance," Lisa ordered. Maria Santos was young and had only been on the ship for 6 months, but she was very good at her job. She worked at the communications and navigation station and had learned to fly the ship almost, as well as Lisa herself. "Yes, Captain," Maria said, and began working at her controls. The Defiance moved slowly through space toward the asteroid field. As they got closer, the energy readings became stronger and more complex. Kate worked frantically at her station, trying to understand what they were seeing. "Captain, I am picking up some kind of structure," Kate announced. "It is huge and definitely not natural." On the main screen, they could see it now. Among the floating rocks was something that looked like a giant crystal. It was clear in some places and dark in others, and it seemed to pulse with inner light. The structure was at least 5 kilometers long and shaped like a diamond that had been stretched out. "My God," Rebecca whispered. "How old do you think it is?" "The energy pattern suggested has been here for millions of years," Kate replied. "But Captain, it is definitely still active." Lisa felt her heart beating faster. This was exactly the kind of discovery that explorers dreamed about. An ancient alien structure that was still functioning after millions of years. "Take us closer, but be ready to run if anything happens," Lisa ordered. As the Defiance approached the crystal structure, something unexpected occurred. The pulsing light inside began to change color, and the energy readings spiked dramatically. Then, without warning, a bright beam of light shot out from the structure and swept across their ship. "Captain, we are being scanned," Maria called out. "Whatever that thing is, it knows we are here." Lisa was about to order a retreat when something even more dramatic happened. The entire crystal structure suddenly blazed with brilliant light and sent out a massive pulse of energy that expanded in all directions. The wave passed through the Defiance without causing any damage, but their instruments went crazy for several seconds. "Kate, what just happened?" Lisa demanded. Kate was staring at her screens in amazement. "Captain, that energy pulse just traveled faster than light. It will reach every star system in the galaxy within a few hours." "What does that mean?" Amy asked. "I think," Kate said slowly, That we just activated some kind of beacon. And now everyone in the galaxy knows where we are. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. They had come here looking for knowledge, but instead they might have just announced humanity's location to whoever built this ancient device. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. The crystal structure continued to pulse with light, but it did not send out any more energy beams. The crew of the Defiance studied it carefully and tried to understand its purpose. Kate discovered that it was made from materials that did not exist anywhere else in the known universe. Then on the third day, Maria picked up something on her long-range sensors. "Captain, I am detecting multiple ships approaching our position," she announced. "They are big and moving very fast." Lisa rushed to her station. "How many ships?" "At least 12, Captain, and they are unlike anything in our databases. They should arrive in about 6 hours." Lisa called all senior officers to the conference room. When everyone was seated, she looked around the table at the faces of her closest friends and colleagues. "We may have made a serious mistake," she began. "That beacon has called someone here, and we do not know if they are friendly or hostile." "Captain," Rebecca said, "this could be the most important moment in human history. We might be about to make first contact with an alien civilization. Or we might be about to die," Amy added grimly. Kate had been working on her tablet while they talked. Now she looked up with a worried expression. "Captain, I have been analyzing the energy signatures from those approaching ships. They use the same type of energy as the beacon, but their technology seems much more advanced." "What are you saying?" Lisa asked. "I think whoever built that beacon also built those ships. And if the beacon is millions of years old, then we are dealing with a civilization that has had space travel for longer than humans have existed." Lisa stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. She could not see the approaching ships yet, but she knew they were coming. In a few hours, humanity would meet its first alien visitors, and she had no idea what that would mean for the future. "Amy, prepare the ship for possible combat, but do not raise shields or charge weapons unless I give the order," Lisa commanded. "Rebecca, start working on first contact protocols. Kate, I want you to monitor everything about those ships. Maria, prepare a message to Earth, but do not send it until I tell you." As her officers left to carry out their orders, Lisa remained at the window staring into the darkness. She had always wondered what it would be like to meet aliens. Now she was about to find out, and she could only hope that humanity was ready for what was coming. 6 months had passed since the alien ships first appeared above Earth, and everything had changed. The beings who came from those elegant vessels called themselves the Veltar Dominion, and they claimed to be the gods that humans had worshipped throughout history. Most people on Earth believed them. Amy Clark stood in the shuttle bay of a transport ship heading toward Earth and felt sick to her stomach. She had volunteered to return to the home planet to see how humanity was doing under their new divine rulers. What she found there made her wish she had never come. The cities looked beautiful from space. Gleaming towers of crystal and metal reached toward the sky, and everything seemed perfect and clean. But when Amy walked through the streets of New York, she noticed something wrong with the people. They moved slowly and smiled constantly, but their eyes looked empty, as if something important was missing from inside their heads. Amy had spent 3 days on Earth visiting different cities and talking to people she had known before the Dominion arrived. Her own sister Linda worked in a government office and seemed happy, but when Amy asked her about the old days, Linda looked confused, as if she could barely remember what life had been like before the Veltar came. "Why would anyone want to go back to those dark times?" Linda had asked. "The Blessed Ones have given us everything we need. We are happy now." The Blessed Ones was what humans called the Veltar. They were tall and graceful with pointed ears and pale skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Their faces were beautiful beyond description, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like music. It was easy to understand why people thought they were divine. But Amy remembered the sensor readings from 6 months ago. She remembered Kate's analysis of their technology and the energy signatures that did not quite match what the Veltar claimed about themselves. Something was not right about these supposed gods. Amy made her way to the old United Nations building, which now served as the Dominion's headquarters on Earth. She had arranged to meet with one of the Veltar representatives named Silvera, who was responsible for human relations. Silvera was waiting in a beautiful office that overlooked the city. She wore flowing robes that seemed to be made from liquid light, and her silver hair hung down to her waist. When she smiled at Amy, it was like looking directly into the sun. Welcome back to Earth, Commander Clark, Silvera said in her musical voice. I trust you are pleased with the improvements we have made. The cities are certainly impressive, Amy replied carefully, but I have some questions about the people. Questions? Silvera's perfect eyebrows rose slightly. What kind of questions? Amy took a deep breath. They seem different, less energetic, less creative. Is this normal? Silvera's smile never wavered. Humans have been blessed with peace and contentment. You no longer need to struggle with the negative emotions that once plagued your species. Anger, jealousy, and fear have been removed from your daily experience. But what about curiosity? What about the drive to explore and discover new things? Such drives led humans to make weapons and wage wars, Silvera explained patiently. We have freed you from those destructive impulses. Now you can focus on more spiritual pursuits. Amy felt her anger rising but tried to keep her voice calm. And who decided that humans needed to be changed? For just a moment, Silvera's smile flickered and something cold appeared in her eyes. Then the expression was gone so quickly that Amy wondered if she had imagined it. The Dominion has guided countless younger races toward enlightenment, Silvera said. We have millions of years of experience in these matters. Surely you do not question our wisdom. Amy left the meeting feeling more worried than before. She spent the rest of her time on Earth gathering information, and what she learned made her blood run cold. The Veltar had introduced something into the water supply and the air that made humans docile and compliant. They called it a blessing, but Amy recognized it for what it really was. Meanwhile, far from Earth, the crew of the Defiance continued their investigation of the ancient crystal structure. Kate had made several important discoveries while studying the beacon. The technology was definitely not Veltar in origin and appeared to be much older than anything the Dominion possessed. Dr. Rebecca Stone was working in her laboratory when she received an encrypted message that made her heart race. The message came from someone calling themselves Kyleth and claimed to be a Veltar who wanted to help humanity. Dr. Stone. The message began, I have been studying your species since we arrived, and I have become concerned about my people's actions. The Dominion is not what they claim to be, and humans are in great danger. Rebecca looked around the laboratory to make sure she was alone before responding to the message. Who are you? And why should I trust you? The reply came quickly. I am Scholar Kyleth of the Research Division. I specialize in studying younger races and their potential. What my people are doing to humanity is wrong, and I want to stop it. What exactly are they doing? Rebecca asked. The Dominion uses a pattern that they have perfected over thousands of years. They arrive at a world claiming to be gods and convince the population to accept their guidance. Then they slowly modify the inhabitants to make them easier to control. Rebecca felt her hands shaking as she typed her next question. How many worlds have they done this to? 47 that I know of. Each time the result is the same. The native population becomes docile and loses their creativity and independence. Eventually, they are reduced to servants and workers while the Dominion harvests their world's resources. And Earth? Earth was supposed to be different. My people were impressed by human adaptability and intelligence. They thought humans might be useful for solving certain technical problems. But the process is the same. You are being slowly lobotomized under the pretense of divine guidance. Rebecca saved the conversation and immediately sent a coded message to Captain Morgan. When Lisa read the information, she called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. We have confirmation of what we suspected, Lisa announced to her assembled crew. The Veltar are not gods, and they are not here to help humanity. They are conquerors who use deception instead of force. Kate looked up from her tablet where she had been reviewing data from the beacon. Captain, I think I know why they use that. Crystal structure. It is not just a beacon. It is a weapon designed to disrupt the type of technology the Dominion uses. A weapon? Amy asked. She had returned from Earth just hours before, and her report about the condition of humanity had left. Everyone feeling angry and helpless. The beacon was built by a race that knew about civilizations like the Dominion, Kate explained. They created it as a defense mechanism, but it requires a specific genetic signature to activate, and that signature can only be found in humans. Lisa stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the crystal structure. You are saying that whoever built that thing millions of years ago somehow knew that humans would eventually find it? Not exactly, Captain. I think they built it for any race that might encounter the Dominion. The genetic requirement is not specific to humans, but to any species that has not been modified by Dominion technology. Rebecca joined the conversation from her station. Keyleth told me something else. The Dominion's technology is not their own. They stole it from other civilizations they conquered, and they have a critical weakness. What kind of weakness? Lisa asked. Their entire civilization depends on a type of exotic matter that they cannot create. They can only harvest it from certain cosmic phenomena. If that supply was cut off, their technology would fail within days. Amy leaned forward in her chair. So we have a weapon that can disrupt their technology and knowledge of a weakness that could cripple their entire empire. Yes, Lisa replied. But we also have a problem. Most of humanity is already under their control, and Earth's governments consider us to be rebels. If we try to activate that beacon, they will probably try to stop us. Kate checked her instruments again. Captain, we are also running out of time. My analysis suggests that the neural modifications the Dominion is using on humans become permanent after about a year. If we do not act soon, it may be too late to save our people. Lisa looked around the table at her officers and friends. They were just one small ship against an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. But they were also the only humans left, who were completely free, and that meant the responsibility for saving their species rested on their shoulders. Maria, send a coded message to any human ships or colonies that might still be independent, Lisa ordered. Tell them what we have learned, and ask them to prepare for a fight. As her crew carried out their orders, Lisa remained standing at the window staring at the ancient beacon. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were other species that had faced the same choice humans now faced. Most of them had probably failed, and their worlds had become part of the Dominion Empire. But this time would be different because humans had something that the Veltar had never encountered before. They had the stubborn refusal to accept that anyone could be their gods. The Defiance had become something it was never designed to be. What started as an exploration vessel was now the headquarters of a rebellion that could determine the fate of humanity. Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the cargo bay and watched as her crew worked frantically to prepare for what everyone knew would be their most dangerous mission. Over the past month, small groups of humans had arrived at the ancient beacon. Some came in cargo ships and mining vessels, while others traveled in emergency pods that barely had life support. They were colonists from the outer worlds and crew members from ships that had been far from Earth when the Dominion arrived. All of them had heard Maria's coded transmission and decided to fight rather than surrender. Kate Phillips was working with a team of volunteers to modify their weapons and equipment. The humans had discovered that the Veltar ships were vulnerable to physical projectiles fired at high speed. The elegant alien vessels had powerful energy shields, but they were not designed to stop simple bullets and missiles. Captain, we have completed the modifications to the torpedo tubes, Kate reported. We can now fire our nuclear weapons with conventional propulsion instead of relying on guided systems that the Dominion can interfere with. Dr. Rebecca Stone was in her laboratory working on something even more important. Using information provided by Keyleth, she had developed a treatment that could reverse the neural modifications the Dominion had made to humans on Earth. The challenge was finding a way to distribute it to billions of people before the changes became permanent. The counter-agent works perfectly in laboratory tests, Rebecca explained to Lisa during their daily briefing. But we need to get it into the water supply of every major city on Earth, and that means getting past Dominion defenses. Keyleth had continued to provide intelligence about Dominion operations, but she had also brought disturbing news. War Commander Zix Anna had convinced Queen Mordienne that the human resistance was becoming a serious threat. The Dominion was preparing to begin what they called the harvest phase. What exactly does that mean? Lisa had asked during one of their secret communications. They will take the most intelligent and creative humans for intensive study, Keyleth explained. The rest will be eliminated as unnecessary. My people have done this before when a species proved too difficult to control. Completely. The news had hit the human resistance like a physical blow. They were not just fighting for freedom anymore, but for survival. If they failed, then humanity would join the 47 other civilizations that had been reduced to a handful of research subjects. Amy Clark was leading a team that had been studying the ancient beacon more carefully. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about the weapon and the race that built it. "Captain, we found something incredible inside the beacon," Amy announced during an emergency meeting. "There are data storage devices that contain information about the civilization that built this place." "What kind of information?" Lisa asked. "Everything. Their history, their technology, and most importantly, their war against races like the Dominion. They called themselves the Architects, and they fought a galaxy-wide conflict against species that enslaved other civilizations." Kate joined the discussion from her engineering station. "The Architects lost their war captain, but before they died, they built these beacons as a warning and a weapon for future generations. There are hundreds of them scattered throughout the galaxy." "How many other species have found them?" Rebecca asked. "According to the data files," Amy replied, "only 3 other races successfully activated their beacons in the past million years. 2 of them used the weapons to drive off the Dominion, but the 3rd civilization destroyed itself in the process." Lisa felt a chill when she heard those words. "Destroyed itself how?" "The beacon requires enormous amounts of energy to function," Kate explained. "If the user does not have sufficient power sources, the weapon will draw energy from whatever is available, including the life force of nearby organic beings." "You are saying that using this weapon could kill us all?" "Only if we do it wrong, Captain. The Architects included detailed instructions for safe operation, but it requires careful preparation and precise timing. While the humans prepared their desperate plan, the Dominion was making preparations of their own." War Commander Zixana had assembled a fleet of battle cruisers and was moving toward the outer colonies where the human resistance was believed to be hiding. Zixana was different from other Veltar. Where most of her people were elegant and beautiful, she was tall and imposing with scars on her face from ancient battles. She had been fighting rebellions for 1,000 years and had never lost a campaign. "The humans are more troublesome than expected," she told her assembled captains during a briefing aboard her flagship. "They fight with primitive weapons, but they use tactics that we have not encountered before." "Surely they cannot pose a real threat to the Dominion," one of her subordinates suggested. "They are a young race with limited technology." "Never underestimate an enemy," Zixana replied sharply. "The humans have already proven they can damage our ships and they show no fear of death. Such opponents are always dangerous regardless of their technology level." The war commander had studied reports from previous engagements with human forces. The humans had developed what they called suicide attacks, where pilots would ram their ships into Dominion vessels at high speed. The tactic was primitive but effective, and it reminded Zixana of other species that had chosen death before surrender. On Earth, the situation was becoming desperate for the human population. The neural modifications were advancing more quickly than expected, and people were losing their memories and personalities at an alarming rate. Families could no longer recognize each other, and children stared blankly at toys they had once loved. Silvera walked through the streets of what had once been called Paris and felt satisfied with the progress. The humans were becoming properly docile and would soon be ready for the next phase of their development. She stopped at a cafe where a group of humans sat drinking coffee and staring into space with empty expressions. "Good morning, my children," she said in her musical voice. "Are you happy?" "Yes, Blessed One," they replied in unison. "We are happy." But even as Silvera smiled at their response, she was troubled by reports from her intelligence network. There were still humans somewhere who had not been modified, and they were becoming more aggressive in their resistance activities. She had already lost 3 ships to their crude but effective attacks. Back at the beacon, Lisa was preparing for the most important decision of her life. The weapon was almost ready to fire, but using it would require someone to serve as the genetic key. According to the Architect data files, that person would not survive the activation process. "There has to be another way," Amy argued during their final planning session. "We cannot ask anyone to sacrifice their life for this." "I am not asking," Lisa replied quietly. "I am volunteering. This is my responsibility as captain and my choice as a human being." Rebecca looked up from her medical scans. "Lisa, the energy? Drain will be almost instantaneous. There will be no way to reverse the process once it begins." "I understand that, but if we do not use this weapon, then billions of people will suffer a fate worse than death. they will become empty shells of what they once were. Kate had been working on the technical aspects of the activation sequence. Captain, there might be a way to minimize the energy requirement. If we use the ship's power core as a buffer, we could reduce the biological energy needed by 90%. Reduce it to what level? Lisa asked. Still lethal, but the process would take several hours instead of several seconds. That might give us time to find an alternative power source. Maria spoke up from her communication station. Captain, I am receiving messages from human colonies throughout this sector. They are asking for orders and want to know when we will begin the final attack. Lisa looked around the bridge at her crew and the volunteers who had joined them. These people had given up their homes and their safety to fight for something they believed in. They deserved a leader who was willing to make the same sacrifice. Send this message to all human forces, Lisa commanded. In 12 hours, we will activate the beacon and begin our assault on Dominion positions throughout the galaxy. Everyone should prepare for battle and remember that we are not just fighting for ourselves, but for every species that has ever fallen victim to false gods. As Maria transmitted the message, Lisa walked to the window and looked out at the ancient crystal structure. In a few hours, she would connect her nervous system to a weapon built by a dead civilization and try to strike a blow that would be felt across the entire galaxy. She did not know if they would succeed, but she knew that humanity would face its fate with courage and determination. The Veltar had made one critical mistake when they chose humans as their next target. They had assumed that, like all the other species they had conquered, humans would eventually accept their supposed divinity. But humans had spent thousands of years learning to question authority and fight against oppression. Now they would discover what happened when a species refused to worship anyone as gods. The battle for humanity began at exactly 1400 hours when Lisa Morgan connected herself to the ancient beacon and felt the power of a dead civilization flow through her body. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced, but she held on as the weapon came to life for the first time in 1,000,000 years. Across the galaxy, the Dominion felt the pulse as it raced through space faster than light itself. On their homeworld, Queen Mordienne felt her perfect features twist, with rage as reports flooded in from every corner of her empire. The impossible had happened, and a primitive species was using architect technology against her forces. War Commander Zixana was aboard her flagship, preparing to attack the human colony on Kepler 438b when the pulse hit her ship. Every system flickered and went dark for several terrifying seconds before emergency power restored basic functions. When her sensors came back online, she discovered that half her fleet was drifting helplessly in space. What happened? She demanded from her bridge crew. Unknown weapon effect, War Commander, her science officer reported. All advanced systems have been disabled. Only basic life support and propulsion remain functional. Zixana stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In one instant, the humans had reduced her mighty fleet to the technological level of primitive chemical rockets. But even as she processed this disaster, she felt a cold smile cross her scarred features. Signal all ships, she ordered. We attack immediately with conventional weapons. If the humans want to fight with primitive technology, then we will show them how wars were fought before the Dominion perfected their advanced systems. Amy Clark had taken command of the Defiance when Lisa connected herself to the beacon. Now she watched the tactical display as human forces throughout the galaxy began their coordinated assault on Dominion positions. The enemy ships were crippled, but they were still dangerous, and the humans had to move quickly before the Veltar adapted to the new situation. All ships, this is Commander Clark, Amy, broadcast on all frequencies. The beacon has worked, and enemy advanced systems are down. Begin attack pattern Alpha, and remember that we are fighting for the future of humanity. Kate Phillips was monitoring the beacon's power consumption from her engineering station. The weapon was drawing enormous amounts of energy from the ship's reactors and from Lisa herself. They had perhaps 6 hours before the biological drain became fatal. Amy, we need to end this quickly, Kate warned. The beacon is stable for now, but Lisa cannot maintain this connection much longer. In the medical bay, Dr. Rebecca Stone was preparing the counteragent that would reverse the neural modifications in humans throughout the galaxy. With Dominion communications disabled, she hoped to broadcast the chemical formula to every human colony and let local doctors manufacture the treatment. Maria, are our communications systems still functional? Rebecca asked. Yes, Doctor. Maria. replied from her station. The beacon pulse did not affect our equipment since we were shielded by our proximity to the source. I can reach any human settlement that still has receivers. The first battle took place above the mining colony on Ross 128B, where a small group of human fighters attacked a Dominion patrol vessel. Without their energy shields and advanced weapons, the elegant alien ship found itself helpless against simple kinetic projectiles fired from human railguns. Captain John Davis commanded the human defense force, and he felt his heart race as he watched his missiles strike the enemy vessel. For months, he had seen Dominion ships as invincible symbols of alien superiority. Now they were just targets waiting to be destroyed. All fighters concentrate fire on their engine section, Davis ordered. Let's see how divine they are when they're floating dead in space. Similar battles were taking place throughout human space, as colonists and miners turned their industrial equipment into weapons. Asteroid mining charges became bombs, and cargo haulers became assault ships, as ordinary humans found the courage to fight back against their supposed gods. But the most important battle was happening on Earth itself, where the human resistance had been waiting for this moment. Hidden cells of unmodified humans emerged from underground bunkers and began attacking Dominion facilities in every major city. Sarah Kim led a team of rebels in what had once been called Soul, and she felt tears streaming down her face as she watched her modified neighbors wandering the streets in confusion. The beacon pulse had disrupted the neural control devices, but the people were still damaged and might never fully recover their original personalities. We need to get the counter-agent into the water supply before the Dominion repairs their systems, Sarah told her team as they approached a water treatment facility guarded by a single Veltar overseer. The alien was tall and beautiful, as all Veltar were, but without her advanced technology, she was just another target. Sarah's team used simple firearms to eliminate the guard and then began introducing Rebecca's counter-agent into the city's water system. War Commander Zixana had managed to restore partial communications with her fleet and was coordinating a desperate counterattack. The humans were primitive and disorganized, but they were also fearless, and they seemed to be everywhere at once. "How many ships have we lost?" she asked her tactical officer. 17 confirmed destroyed, War Commander, and another 31 are severely damaged. The humans are using suicide attacks against any vessel that attempts to retreat. Zixana had fought many campaigns, but she had never faced an enemy that seemed to welcome death in battle. The humans crashed their ships into Dominion vessels with no regard for their own survival, and their primitive weapons were proving surprisingly effective against technology that could no longer defend itself. "Signal the homeworld," she ordered. "Request immediate reinforcements and tell them that the human threat has been severely underestimated." On the Defiance, Kate was struggling to keep the beacon stable as its power requirements continued to increase. Lisa was still connected to the system, but her life signs were growing weaker with each passing hour. "Amy, we have maybe 2 hours before the energy drain becomes irreversible," Kate reported. "We need to finish this now, or we will lose Lisa and possibly the beacon itself." Amy studied the tactical reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human forces were winning individual battles, but the Dominion still had millions of ships scattered throughout their empire. Even with their advanced technology disabled, they could overwhelm humanity through sheer numbers if given enough time. "Rebecca, how long before your counteragent takes effect on Earth?" Amy asked. "The early reports suggest that people are beginning to recover their memories and personalities within hours of treatment," Rebecca replied. "But it will take days or weeks for them to fully heal from the neural damage." "We don't have days or weeks," Amy said grimly. "Maria, get me a direct communication link with Kyleth. We need her help to end this quickly." The Veltar scholar had been hiding aboard a Dominion research vessel and risking her life to provide intelligence to the human resistance. When Maria's signal reached her, she felt both hope and terror at what the humans were attempting. "Commander Clark." Kyleth's voice came through the speakers filled with static from the disrupted Dominion communication networks. "What you have done today will be remembered throughout the galaxy for millions of years. But Queen Mordienne is preparing to use her final weapon." "What final weapon?" Amy demanded. "The Dominion has a planet-killer device that they have never needed to use before. If they cannot reclaim their empire, they will destroy Earth and every human colony as an example to other species that might consider rebellion." Amy felt her blood turn to ice. Everything they had accomplished would be meaningless if the Dominion simply destroyed all human worlds out of spite. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Perhaps 6 hours before the weapon can be brought to bear on Earth," Kyleth replied. "But Commander, there might be a way to stop them. The planet killer draws its power from the same exotic matter sources that fuel all Dominion technology. If those sources could be destroyed, their entire civilization would collapse within days." Kate looked up from her engineering console with sudden understanding. The beacon is not just a weapon that disrupts their technology. It can also track the exotic matter back to its source and destroy the facilities that harvest it. "But that would require enormous amounts of energy," Amy protested. "More than Lisa can possibly provide." "Not just Lisa," Kate said quietly. "The beacon can draw energy from any willing participant. If enough humans connected to the system, it might have the power needed to destroy every exotic matter facility in the Dominion Empire." Amy understood what Kate was suggesting and felt her heart break. They could save humanity and free the galaxy from the Dominion, but it would require dozens of people to sacrifice their lives to power the ancient weapon. "How many volunteers would we need?" Amy asked. "At least 50 based on my calculations," Kate replied. "But Commander, there is something else. Once we destroy their exotic matter sources, every piece of Dominion technology will stop working immediately. That includes their life support systems and medical equipment. Billions of Veltar could die." Amy looked around the bridge at her crew and the volunteers who had joined their desperate mission. They had come here to save humanity, but now they faced a choice that would determine the fate of 2 entire civilizations. "Signal all human forces," Amy ordered after a long moment of silence. "Tell them what we have learned and ask for volunteers. Make it clear that this is a one-way mission, but that success will free not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy from Dominion rule." As Maria began transmitting the message, Amy walked to the window and looked out at the ancient beacon. In a few hours, they would either save their species or die trying. But whatever happened, the galaxy would know that humanity had refused to bow down to false gods and had chosen to fight for freedom even when victory seemed impossible. The response to Amy's call for volunteers came faster than anyone had expected. Within 2 hours, 49 humans had arrived at the beacon ready to give their lives to save their species. They came from mining ships and cargo vessels and colony transports, and they all understood that they would not be going home. Lisa Morgan was still connected to the beacon, but her consciousness was fading as the ancient weapon drew more and more energy from her body. Through the neural link, she could sense the approaching volunteers and felt both pride and sorrow at their courage. "Captain, can you hear me?" Amy asked through the communication system they had rigged to the beacon interface. "I hear you, Amy." Lisa's voice was weak but determined. "Are the volunteers ready?" "They are all here, and they know what this means," Amy replied. "Lisa, I want you to know that what you have done today will save billions of lives throughout the galaxy. Just make sure it counts," Lisa whispered. "And tell my sister that I died doing what I believed in." Kate Phillips was working frantically at her engineering station as the volunteers began connecting themselves to the beacon's neural interface. Each new connection increased the weapon's power, but also added to the complexity of controlling the system. "Amy, we are approaching critical mass," Kate announced. "When the 50th volunteer connects, we will have enough energy to destroy every exotic matter facility in Dominion space." Dr. Rebecca Stone was monitoring the life signs of all the volunteers and fighting back tears as she watched their vital functions begin to fail. These people were heroes in the truest sense, but that did not make watching them die any easier. "All volunteers are connected and stable," Rebecca reported. "We have perhaps 30 minutes before the energy drain becomes fatal for everyone involved." The homeworld of the Dominion Queen Mordienne stood in her throne room and watched as reports of defeat poured in from across her empire. The humans had crippled her fleets and were spreading their counter-agent to enslaved populations throughout the galaxy. Dozens of species were beginning to remember what freedom felt like. "My queen," her advisor said nervously, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans. They have proven more capable than we anticipated." "Never," Mordienne replied with cold fury. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then we will destroy it. Activate the planet killer and target every human world. When other species see what happens, to those who defy us, they will remember their place. War Commander Zixana received the order to deploy the ultimate weapon and felt a moment of doubt. She had spent her life fighting to build the Dominion Empire, but using the planet killer would make them no better than the enemies they claimed to protect the galaxy from. War Commander, her tactical officer said, the weapon will be ready to fire in 20 minutes. Should I target Earth first? Zixana stared at the tactical display showing the blue world where billions of humans lived and worked and loved. In 20 minutes, she could turn that beautiful planet into cosmic dust with a single command. Stand by, she ordered. I want to see what these humans do with their remaining time. The answer came faster than she expected. The ancient beacon suddenly blazed with light brighter than a star and sent out a pulse that made the first one seem like a whisper. This time, the energy wave did not just disrupt Dominion technology, but sought out and destroyed the exotic matter facilities that powered their entire civilization. Throughout the galaxy, Dominion installations went dark as their energy sources simply vanished. Ships that had sailed between the stars for thousands of years drifted helplessly in space, while cities that had stood since before humanity existed lost power and fell silent. On her flagship, Zixana watched as every system failed one by one. The elegant displays went dark, and the musical hum of exotic matter engines faded to nothing. In the space of seconds, her mighty vessel had become a tomb floating in the void. Emergency power only, her chief engineer reported. All primary systems are offline and cannot be restored. Zixana understood what had happened and felt something she had not experienced in centuries. For the first time in her long life, she was afraid. The humans had not just defeated the Dominion, but had destroyed the foundation of their civilization. On the Defiance, Amy watched as the beacon completed its work and then went silent forever. The volunteers who had given their lives to power the weapon were gone, but their sacrifice had accomplished something that would echo through history. Kate, what is the status of Dominion forces? Amy asked. All exotic matter signatures have vanished from our sensors, Kate replied. Their advanced technology is completely offline and will remain that way unless they can find new energy sources. And the planet killer weapon? Dead in space, Commander. Without exotic matter, it is just another piece of metal drifting in the void. As news of the victory spread throughout human space, people began to celebrate in ways they had not done for months. On Earth, the counter-agent was working, and humans were remembering who they had been before the Dominion arrived. Children laughed for the first time in half a year, and families hugged each other as they recognized loved ones they had almost lost forever. But the victory was not complete yet. Throughout the galaxy, billions of Veltar were stranded on dying ships and darkened worlds. Without their technology, many of them would not survive more than a few days. It was Kyleth who suggested a solution that surprised everyone. The young scholar had managed to reach a human communication relay, and her message was broadcast to resistance forces throughout the galaxy. People of the galaxy, she began, my species has committed terrible crimes against yours, and we deserve whatever punishment you choose to give us. But I ask you to remember that not all Veltar supported what the Dominion did. Many of us were as much prisoners of the system as you were. Amy listened to the transmission from the bridge of the Defiance and felt the weight of an enormous decision. Humanity now had the power to let the Veltar die or to show them the mercy that they had never shown to others. This is Commander Amy Clark of the Human Resistance, Amy broadcast on all frequencies. To all human forces and liberated populations throughout the galaxy. We have won our freedom, but now we must decide what kind of people we want to be. She paused for a moment and thought about Lisa and the other volunteers who had died to make this moment possible. We will not become the monsters that our enemies were, Amy continued. Any Veltar who renounces the Dominion and agrees to make amends for their crimes will be given humanitarian aid. We will not let them die, even though they would have destroyed us without hesitation. The response from human forces was mixed, but most agreed with Amy's decision. Rescue ships began moving toward stranded Dominion vessels, and emergency supplies were sent to Veltar worlds that were facing ecological collapse without their technology. Queen Mordienne was found dead in her throne room 3 days later. Rather than face a galaxy that no longer feared her, she had chosen to end her own life. War Commander Zix Anna surrendered her forces to a human rescue fleet and requested permission to stand trial for war crimes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked Amy during their first meeting. "We would have shown you no such mercy." "Because we are not you," Amy replied simply. "Humans learned long ago that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats its enemies." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to heal from centuries of Dominion rule. Enslaved species rediscovered their cultures and began building new civilizations based on cooperation rather than conquest. The Veltar, who chose to make amends, worked alongside their former victims to repair the damage their empire had caused. Kyleth became the leader of a new Veltar government that renounced all claims to divine authority and worked to establish peaceful relations with other species. She often said that humanity had taught her people what it truly meant to be civilized. Maria Santos was promoted to captain and given command of a new exploration vessel called the UES Unity. Her mission was to seek out species that had been enslaved by the Dominion and help them rebuild their civilizations. Kate Phillips became the head of a joint research project between humans and reformed Veltar to study architect technology and learn more about the ancient race that had tried to protect the galaxy from conquest. Dr. Rebecca Stone established medical clinics throughout former Dominion space to help populations recover from centuries of neural modification and genetic manipulation. The ancient beacon was converted into a memorial for Lisa Morgan and the 49 volunteers who had given their lives to save the galaxy. An inscription was placed on the structure in dozens of languages that read, "They called themselves gods, but true divinity belongs to those who sacrifice themselves for others." Amy Clark often visited the memorial and thought about the choice her species had made. Humanity could have become the new rulers of the galaxy, but instead they had chosen to be its protectors. It was a decision that would define them for generations to come. Years later, when historians wrote about the war against the Dominion, they would call it the moment when the galaxy learned that no species had the right to rule over others, but those who lived through it knew a simpler truth. Sometimes ordinary people have to do extraordinary things to protect what they love, and when that moment comes, the measure of their character is determined by whether they choose to fight or surrender. The humans had chosen to fight, and in doing so, they had proven that freedom is not something that can be given by gods or taken by conquerors. It is something that must be earned through courage and sacrifice and the willingness to stand up to anyone who claims the right to rule over others. The galaxy was free, and humanity had shown that even false gods can fall when people refuse to bow down to them.